During World War II, I was in the Merchant Navy for 3.5 years, and I was a year in the Army. And during that time, of course, I had reached a point in my life where I didn't believe in God anymore. My mother died when I was 12 years old. I've been brought up Catholic. I developed a hatred for God for a number of reasons. And by the time that I was 18 years of age, I had read all kinds of books written by infidels. And by the time that I was 20 years of age, or 21 or so, I had arrived at the conclusion that there was no such thing as a personal God, that God was a great force in the universe that, moved around and caused all these galaxies to be formed. And after World War II, I was blessed of God. I can see the day where the God of heaven had his hand over me all of this time, all of these years. Well, let me try to make it short. After World War II, I went to Montreal and decided to learn a trade of some type. And I had taken a job with the Windsor Bowling Alleys and Billiards, which is a luxury, which was in those days a luxury place for people to enjoy bowling or billiard. I was assistant to the billiard room manager. And one day, about 6 o'clock, I hear this man says, "Hey, Morneau, you're alive." I turn around and there's an old sailing buddy. And I said, "Of course I'm alive. Why do you think?" He said, "Well, I heard that you'd been torpedoed in the North Atlantic. You had a dozen ships that had gone down and all that, and that you died." Well, I said, "You heard wrong." So he tells me, he said, "Man, can you take the evening off? You could have dinner together. I want to tell you," he says, "about my new life." And I said, "Well, what's it all about?" He says, "Find out from the boss, you get the evening off." So I asked my boss, it was like a Wednesday evening, there was not too many people there. You could have the evening off. "Yeah, sure." So, and of course, he tells me in the university we're reading that he had joined a society that spake with the spirits of the dead. And he said, "How would you like to talk to the spirit of your dead mother?" And I said, "I wouldn't like it at all." And he wanted me to go to one of his seances, etc. So I went with him to seances, and there was a lot of different things that took place there. It must have been about maybe for 2 or 3 months. And then the next thing that I knew, we were both brought into a high society of Luciferians, were spirit worshippers. And the society that no one came into that society except that the great master, which you refer to as Satan, or the spirit counselor, which is one of his chief persons that has responsibility over billions of angels, would give the authorization. The club was strictly men, no women there at all. We had about 150 people in Montreal. I was very, very surprised to find out when I went first there that most of I thought I was going to meet a lot of tough-looking characters, but to my great surprise, most of the people there were all professionals. They were doctors, lawyers, business people that, with power and capacities and all of that. All capable people. And the next thing that we knew, of course, the high priest wanted to initiate us into the society. And how many of you have read here A Trip to the Supernatural? You've read the whole story, okay. Well, there's about half the people that haven't, but I'm going to make it short. What happened here is that from that time on, the high priest was telling us that the great master wanted us to be initiated at their resort in northern Laurentian Mountains, north of Montreal, north of Saint Agathe. He had a big resort there on October the 31st. That's all of them, 9,000, yeah, And I was given the gift of clairvoyance for a session to prove that the great master had some real great plans for my friend and I. And I was able to go to the bookcase and see, I was given a reading of the winning horses. I said to the high priest, he told me to ask us, he said, look, I have some gifts for you people to choose from, 5 gifts. Choose one. He said, I talked to the great master. He said, you can have any one of the gifts that you choose. And I told him, I said, well, it'd be nice to have the gift of clairvoyance because it would enable me to see winning horses at the bookcase, you see. And this might be giving myself some nice money. So the high priest says, it's your gift. Sure enough, about 2 days later, I was sitting in a chair and I fell asleep, and I saw this bookie that I used to frequent on Saturday morning.
And they're off. It's a quick.
And I seen all the races and the different horses that were running, and there was always one. There was three races. There was each one in the 3. There was one horse that Low, the name Low, like it was lit up. I said, those are the winners. That's what I asked for. But sure enough, I worked on them in a real bundle of money. But to cut a long story short, the high priest told my friend and I, you need to get initiated now. I said to the high priest, can't I wait a little longer? I'd be like Lord Spaghetti. This was a Lord. He said, Roger, he says, I hate to tell you this, but don't make the great master unhappy. He says, you're going to be initiated. Why don't you do it now? No, I said, give me at least a month or 2. Now, you see, the Spirit of God was overruling this. And I believe that the prayers of my Catholic father were actually blessing my life. Because my dad and mom, they were very religious, and we used to sit there thanking the saints and all that. And my mother loved Mary. So she wanted to bring Mary, and my dad says, don't bring Mary. She didn't die on the cross for us. It's Jesus that died on the cross for us. He's the one that I pray to all the time. And of course, how the Catholics are. My mother said I get more praises through Mary than through Christ. But my dad prayed after Hilda and I had visited there in the 5 days. He said, I thought about you in the water and let it be torpedoed. And I prayed that Jesus would watch over you. Isn't that beautiful? Mm-hmm. So Jesus was watching over it. Oh yes, there was a convoy that we had with 13 ships. 12 was sunk by the Wolfpack's German submarine in the North Atlantic, and the 13th ship didn't sink. And after I became a spiritist, the high priest told me, he says, see how the great master loves you? He made the ship invisible so that they couldn't shoot you. We didn't even get a stray bullet that hit us. None of the others. All the men that were those ships were torpedoed. And the men that went they were able to get to rafts. The German submarine would surface and machine gun them. So they picked out of the water about 12 men in all, of all the 12 ships. So we come into the harbor at Corner Brook, Newfoundland, and everybody was on the dock. They were running and talking and that, and the captain was on the deck. He said, hey, you're awfully excited here. So I wonder what these girls are so excited for. And that's what happened. They said, hey, we just heard on the radio that, you're involved in the sun. Well, he said, we investigate. And that's the way it went. Now, I'm going to tell you, which I believe is the most beautiful prayer I've ever said in my life. You know why it's so beautiful? Because it's so very short. I didn't even know it was a prayer. I came home after the high priest had told us, he said, now listen, he says, Roger, you just make up your mind, okay? Go to initiated, that's it. So I came home that night, and it was a Wednesday night, and I went to bed, tried to sleep, and I couldn't sleep. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I was thinking about this business of initiation and all that. Yeah, yes, I belong to these people. There's no way out. I know that. But I don't want to be initiated right now. Then, as I was there, godless and helpless on that bed, I said, if there's a God in heaven who cares for me, help me. That's it. On Friday, in the afternoon, about 3 o'clock, they had the coffee break at 3 o'clock, so I went downstairs to have a smoke, and the boss, I was working in an embroidery shop, making, piping and sequin works and things like that on ladies' dresses. Because they had manufacturing, ladies' clothing manufacturing in Montreal. That's where I was working. I went by the office, and one of the bosses said, "Hey, Roger, yes, when you come into my office, I want to talk to you." Okay. I came back up, walked in, and he said, "Close the door." I said, "Really?" Now this guy was known, or he was known in the factory, that you only close the door when you wanted to fire somebody. Okay? And I said to myself, "What's the problem?" And I asked him, I said, "What's the problem?" "Oh, there's no problem. Close the door, close the door." Okay. Sit down. Thank you. I said, "What's this all about?" Did you notice this morning I showed the planter, the man, a black man was here? Yeah. He said, I hired him. He's going to start working here on Monday. And he is a Christian, but he's a Jewish Sabbath. "Oh, really? What's the Jewish Sabbath?" "Well, he says 7 days of the week, Saturday." "Oh, that's nice to know." "Yes, that's right too. I know that you people, I've been told that you people keep Saturday or Sunday." And he said, "I want to find out what denomination he belongs to. And this thing is haunting. He said, last night I couldn't hardly sleep at all. I want to find out what denomination this guy belongs to." Man, he says, I don't know if I'm going out of my mind or something, but he says, what a stupid thing to think about. But what does it matter to me if he, he's a Christian and goes to church on the Jewish Sabbath? So I said, "Okay, I'll find out from him." He said, "I'm going to have to work on the machine next to you Monday." Okay. So Monday, Ward introduces Cyril Grossi, and I was, and we talked a little bit, but started working at 8 o'clock, and by 9 o'clock, and my machine started to break threads. When the thread breaks, you have 5 bobbins, 5 different colors of thread. You're working on something. You have to stop. You have to back up. You have to tie the thread, and then you have to start work. While I did all of the things that you're supposed to do to have the thing adjusted right, and we'd work another 5 minutes, it'd break again. So I call my boss, and he comes over and he looks at the machine, and he says, "Everything looks all right," and he works, for 20 minutes. Everything's okay. He says, "Man," he says, "you're turning the corners too fast. You have a handle on the table to go like this, and then turn the head of the foot of the machine." So I tried to go slow, and it wasn't breaking. He came back and took care of this. So at 10 o'clock, we went downstairs for a smoke, and Cyril, I said, "Cyril, is that awful to be stuck with a machine today that's giving me this kind of problem?" I said, "Do you have any suggestions you could give me?" "Well," he said, "maybe one." I said, "What is it?" He said, "I heard you talk to the saints. You were calling the saints down," he says, "from heaven. And he said, I heard the name of the Lord there a few times. If I were you, I would take it easy on the Lord." "Oh." I said, "Thank you." I said, "Yes." I said, and then I saw my opening. I said, "I understand that you're quite a religious man. What denomination do you belong to?" "Oh," he says, "I'm a Seventh-day Adventist." "You are a Seventh-day what?" I said, "Adventist." "Oh, never heard of you people." "I don't think I have." "Oh, what do you believe in?" And he started to tell me about the Second Advent and the observance of the biblical Sabbath of creation. And, and I said, "Tell me a little bit more. What's going to happen when you die?" "Hey, what happens to a person when he or she dies?" And he says, "Well, the breath returns to God, the breath of life returns to God who gave it, and the body goes to the grave." And he tells me that, he says, "So in other words, you're telling me that when people die, they're really dead?" He says, "That's right." "Oh," he said, "that's interesting." I have been involved with seances before and all that. And, I was with the spiritists now, and I was seeing things differently, but I was a little bit. I said, "Say, have you brought your lunch?" He said, "Yes." "How do you say we eat our lunch on the loading dock in the bag?" And I have more questions for you. He said, "Yeah, that's fine." But I said, "Let me tell you something. I don't want to become a Seventh-day Adventist." He said, "Adventist now. And I'm not interested in religion. I'm strictly interested to see what you believe in, and that's all. I go no further." "Oh, that's fine." So I said, "When you wanted me to go to church with you?" "If I tell you that I will not, you're not going to be upset." "Oh, no, you're not upset." I don't know what to say. So we had this nice chat for an hour. And then I come back to work, and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I started to sweat, perspire, and it wasn't hot in the building. It was the fall, it was cool, and the windows were open about maybe 4 inches for ventilation, and I started to perspire for no reason at all. I took my jacket off, and I started to roll my sleeves and open up the shirt. Man, I said, I'm getting to feel very bad. I went to the men's room, closed the door, and as soon as I closed the door, I was jumped upon and being choked. And I grabbed the toilet water tank, and the perspiration was flowing right down like never before. And I said to myself, unless Cyril's God helps me, I'm done. The spirits are going to kill me. I just thought this immediately. I was really free. So I said to myself, this is going to be serious. This business. Am I talking to Cyril Rossi about this Sabbath thing? I mean, the spirits are getting unhappy. So at 5 o'clock, I said to Cyril, what street car do you think to go home? He told me which one it was. I said, you go to the terminal. He says, yeah. Let me walk with you to the terminal. I want to ask you some more questions. So we walked. I said, Cyril, if I went to your house, will you show me out of the Bible what you told me? Denise told me, says, I said, my uncle is a priest. I said, he died at Monsignor of the Roman Catholic Church, and he used to read his Bible, see. But of course, not good for everybody to read the Bible, only the priest read the Bible. He told us a lot of beautiful things. I said, I would like to see it out of the Bible, the things you should make sure it's true. He says, yeah, I'd be glad to give you Bible studies. And I said, what about 7 o'clock? Would 7 o'clock be all right tonight? Oh, no, he said, not tonight. He says, I know, I'm in next weekend. Oh, I said, no, that'd be too late. He said, what's the big rush? Oh, I can't tell you. I can't tell you. I'm sorry. Well, he said, okay, come at 7 o'clock. You had an appointment with somebody you wanted to sell them, set up his collection of jazz records. So anyway, 7 o'clock he got there, introduced me to his wife, and he said, I got to explain something to you, Roger. I told you today that I was a Seventh Adventist, and I don't know why I said I was a Seventh Adventist. I'm not a Seventh Adventist. I'm not a baptized member of the Seventh Adventist Church. My wife is a member, he said, she's a baptized member. She's the one who's going to conduct the Bible study, by the way. And, yes. And he said, I just thought I'd better make things clear to you that I understand that where I stand with Seventh Adventism. Okay. Sandy also says we're going to have this Bible study here entitled The Word of God. She had a little pack of Bible studies about this, like 28 of them. Were about this long, this wide. And you were entitled Bible studies for busy people. You had like 18, 20 questions on there, and you look up the answer in the Bible.
He never blinked.
I said to Cynthia, I whispered to her afterward, he didn't blink. She said, he must be blinking. I said, maybe he blinked the same time I blinked.
So we went to the Bible study, and it was 8 o'clock, and we had one Bible study over. And I said, what's the next Bible study? And she said, well, that's Daniel 2. I said, Daniel 2? Tell me a bit about what it is. And she explained. I said, wow, let's have a Bible study also. She said, would you sooner come back in maybe 3 or 4 days? And no, like next weekend or something for the second Bible study? I said, oh no, let's have it now. So we had another Bible study. Now it's 9 o'clock, you see. And I said, what's the title of this next study? And she said, I won't tell you. I said, you won't tell me? She said, I think we should have another Bible study like next Saturday night or Sunday or something like that. Then Cyril said, look, I got to explain something to you, okay? Our minister, Pastor Taylor, has been giving us instructions on how to give Bible studies effectively. He says, do not give people more than 2 Bible studies per week. And they must never be on the same day. You let, it should be like 3 or 4 days separated apart, so that people have time to digest all the spiritual food. Otherwise, they're going to have a spiritual indigestion, and they never want to look at the Bible again. Now, he said, we've had 2 Bible studies, and he says, you want a third one? He says, we pass out 4 of us, right? I said, oh, Cyril, I'm so happy that you told me about your minister. I'm going to meet you a promise. I'm going to make you a promise. Yeah. Whenever I meet your minister, I promise you that I will not tell him a thing about it. and we've had 3 or 4 Bible studies. He said, you'll go ahead. So we had a 3rd Bible study, now it's 10 o'clock. I said, what's the next title? She said, now I'm really not going to tell you about it. I said, I can't figure you people out. I get here talking to you so nice, you love the Lord and everything, and there you are, wonderful Christians, and you have a chance, to really help a lost soul. And there you are sitting, you don't want to give me a 4th Bible study. Cheryl said, go ahead. We had Bible study, and now it's 11 o'clock. And I said, well, I get going, because it takes me an hour to get on the street car to get home. So I said to Cyril, and said, yes, now tomorrow night, if I'm alive, I would like to be here, study another couple of Bible studies. And Cyril caught on to that, she did. So, you're going to give me a Bible study tomorrow night, for sure. Yeah, okay, I'll be here 7 o'clock. And I was there Saturday, Tuesday, and we had 4 more Bible studies, you see. And then I told him before I leave now, if I'm alive tomorrow morning, by the grace of God, I had now started saying, God, I'm on to something. And I said, by the grace of God, I want to be here tomorrow night for another couple of Bible studies. He said, okay. And for Wednesday morning, I thought I was going to go home and the spirits are going to do me through a terrible accident, or something. Because not long ago, before that, one of their members had told the high priest that he had decided that he no longer wanted to belong to their association, and if he could be excused. And the high priest, the spirit counselor, the angel told the high priest that this man, let him go, and when he gets down to a certain corner, he's going to have an accident, and he's going to be decapitated. And he says it'll be a good example for your people to have a good experience. Huh? And the man did that. He went down a few blocks, and he was in a car accident, and his head was cut right off, and he flew right out of the car. Oh. So, and it wasn't a newspaper. So, anyway, that I can go to the Spirit said we'll do it for sure. But anyway, I came back Wednesday evening. I had 2 more Bible studies. By the time I had 2 more Bible studies, I had realized that the Lord Jesus had cared for me. He cared for me all of this time. You see? And that He cared, and that He wanted me to make Him my Lord. And in 1 week's time, we had 28 Bible studies, 7 days, 4 per night. The Sabbath morning, I went to church with them, and I kept the biblical Sabbath for 51 years now. It's about 51 years. And never missed, except when I got my heart attack, and I really poor now. I can't go to Sunday school anymore because of my heart attack.
People in Sutter Creek, remember this.